Righto, ladies and gentlemen, boys, girls, everything in between. Dean McKay, the Freedom Chef here. I'm sitting here with LDP candidate for Melbourne, Paul Silverberg, 37-year-old professional who's running for office, mate. Welcome to the Paradigm Shift and Resolute TV. It's really great to have you here. How's your campaign going? Tell us a bit about Paul.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the invitation, Dean. It's great to be sitting with you today, this morning. And in terms of a campaign, I'll be honest with you, it's a very steep learning curve, but it's a good learning curve. I've been in the politics for just over a month. I'll have to check exactly when I signed up to the Liberal Democrats, but it was maybe 9th or 10th of September. And today we're sitting on 13th and 4th October. So I got into campaign mode maybe 2 weeks after signing up. I had to get all the registration done. So it's very much a learning on the go. But that's I think that's what makes it great. It's a level of challenge where you not only doing the right thing, but you're also pushing yourself. You're pushing yourself to improve. You're pushing yourself to learn.
Well, that opens up a great question. If you've only just joined the party very recently. So I've been around the LDP now for about, I think I'm going on 6-7 years. And I've run as a candidate, so I like to allow the LDP guys, my own team, to sort of use my platform in any way that suits them. What made you pick the LDP as a political party? What got you motivated to join up and get active enough to run for office, mate?
Sure. So I think in my heart I've always been a Liberal Democrats member. I just never understood it. And in many ways I'll share a story that happened almost to the day 27 years ago. Now I'm originally from former USSR. Specifically, I'm from Russia, and there was a lot of turmoil 30 years ago. And I remember on this particular day, 4th of October 1993. Not going into too much history. There was president. There was parliament. The president sent tanks against the parliament. So as a 10-year-old kid, I was watching a division of tanks lined up outside this massive parliament house, blasting it. With every blast, people died. Now, I looked at that and I turned to my mom and I said, well, I don't think anybody over the last 100 years dared to do something like this. And the only time that I heard something close to resembling Tiffy in my mom's voice, never heard anything like that before or after, she told me, maybe you should not tell this to anyone again. Well, for apologies to my mom from 27 years ago, I do tell this story because what I saw on our televisions, what I saw when those security forces, police is not the right name for them, they're security forces, when they came into the house, menacing look, with pregnant lady in pajamas in front of your 4-year-old kid and arrested her for a Facebook post. I had a flashback. I had a flashback to the conversations with my mother. Now, I've got a 3-year-old daughter. I do not want to be having a conversation with her in 2027 when there is tanks outside of Parliament or whichever Parliament. I don't want any mother or father to have that conversation with their child in Melbourne, in Australia. I saw that. That is exactly what we are on the track for. And I will do everything in my power to stop that from happening.
Mate, that's one, it's a harrowing story about Russia, and two, I think the comparison with what's going on in Melbourne is, I think it's starting to wake an awful lot of people up. I don't know what the LDP membership's like at the moment. I don't play in that particular sphere of the party anymore, but I feel like we're the party that's going to lead any charge against this sort of stuff. I mean, I saw our members David Limbrick and Tim Quilty getting up in Victorian Parliament and really getting stuck in on how wrong the whole show was. I was like a proud dad watching it. I was going, this is great, well done, boys, get stuck in, because if you're silent, you're complicit. You sort of, by not fighting back, by not saying anything, by not coming out and challenging this complete totalitarian authority, in some ways I see it as you're sort of condoning it. Is that how you sort of would see it?
Dean, and that is an absolutely brilliant quote. I mean, it also reminds me of a quote of I didn't stand up when we came for communists because I was not a communist. I did not stand up when they came for socialists, and then the list goes on and on and on. and there was nobody to stand up for me. That is exactly what was running from my head. And our party, it's doing a fantastic job. It's out there. It is clearly fighting the bill. Now, yesterday there was some sort of an IT issue, and I know how much both of us love IT. So I had for half of a day, I had phones diverting to me. So in between making my business calls and talking to the clients, talking to my partners, I was talking to the voters who were calling David and who were calling him to say how much we're concerned. I had small business owners. I've had people of all ages, urban Melbourne, regional Victoria, and there was an absolute sense that everything what they were saying is, please make sure you convey to David, please make sure, vote against Omnibus, vote against Omnibus. Do not let that happen.
Yeah. I mean, my phone's been running off the hook with people that I know from down in Victoria who sort of go, mate, this is crazy. We never thought this would happen. I had one very dear friend say to me, I'm so embarrassed. I voted for Dan Andrews. And I said, are you going to vote for him this time? Well, no, I'm not. But in saying that, I still have this really nagging feeling that at the next election, he may just keep his job. If all this other stuff, if he manages to navigate what's going on down there now with all of his public servants quitting and all the lies and the BS starting to come out, I actually have this really nasty feeling in my stomach that there's still enough people down there who think that he's doing it for their own best interests that will vote him in again, which really worries me.
Well, Dina, and that's a great question. That really is a great question, and I think uh, uh, I shared exactly the same sentiment to a very good friend of mine the other day, and you know what he said to me? He said to me, Paul, look, yes, there is that I stand with Dan crowd, but ultimately, you do realize there are still flat earthers out there. So there's going to be people supporting. I thought that was.
Maybe
But
with the flat earthers, with the I Stand With Dan crowd, we put them all at the end of the earth and give them a little. No, we can't do that because we wouldn't want to hurt anybody. But it's certainly worth thinking about. What's the old business about throwing communists out of helicopters?
Well, but I think on a more serious note, I think, and this is where I consider myself lucky that my childhood and certain other parts of my life I spent in countries that were a lot less privileged than Australia. So I feel out to anybody who was born and lived their whole life in Australia because it's such a land of an opportunity. It's such a land that had everything done so well that in most people's minds, this paradigm that, okay, yeah, but government lives, there might be a little bit of corruption, a little bit of this, but it's inherently, it's okay. It's not bad. It's not evil, so to speak. Whereas for me, when I saw the signs, it wasn't a particularly difficult paradigm. All I had to do is I had to switch on exactly the same way as I would approach Russian politicians back in the day, or even now, for that matter. And I'll give you an example. Just going back to what got me into into the politics, into elections in the first place. So and I might get his name wrong, but I think Cornelius or Luke or that assistant commissioner was talking about arresting that lady and comparing it to some other protests. Um, let's I don't even care about what he said. It was just the way he said it. The lies and the spin oozed out of him. It literally felt like I stepped in the time machine and I came out. For all I care, it could have been 89, it could have been 91, it could have been these this greasy lies we just felt like we were oozing out of him. I saw that so many times on my television, and we as a country, we do not deserve to see that. We deserve better. As a state, we deserve better.
Oh, 100%. I think as Australians, we deserve better. I think there's a bit of a misconception that we're actually a free country when we're really nowhere near as free as we think we are. I did an interview. I was a guest on a fairly prominent libertarian in America's program the other week, and one of the main topics we discussed was how many points of the Communist Manifesto has Australia adopted versus America. So I think he named the video Australia versus America, which country is more communist? And I think by the time we went through the 10 points, Australia beat America by half a point, 1 point, whatever. But it was a terrifying tick the box exercise we did, whereby I think Australia's at about 7 or 8 points of the Communist Manifesto. We either have completely here, or we have a partial policy that would tick the box to say, yeah, we've got that. So it's a really scary time. I think that I'd love to see more Australians wake up. I'm really glad you joined the party. That's very exciting for me to have new people putting their hands up and fighting for freedom, because it means I'm not alone. Mate, reviving Melbourne. You're right in the electorate of Melbourne, aren't you? You're right in the middle there, the heartland of communist Victoria. Mate, how are you going to tackle it? How are you going to improve it? What are you going to bring to that council and get them back on the right track?
Absolutely. So a couple of things about Council of Victoria. It's a very different council to any other in the state. It's a council where we've got a population of roughly 170,000. Now that population goes up, down, obviously coronavirus, so we'll use 170,000 as an example. There is a few quirks which are very significant versus the rest of the state. So in some of our suburbs, for example, South Bank, North Melbourne, West Melbourne, we've got the rate of renters close to 70%. Just for comparison, in the rest of Victoria, on state average, is roughly 30%. So you can see that the level of challenges is quite different. Furthermore, we're a very young council, so we do have over 50% of 20 to 35. I think it's in some places it's closer to even 60%. And the reason why I'm saying, and the reason why that's important, is we know that the coronavirus, let's say, bomb, it hit the under 35 much harder than anybody else. We're the ones predominantly working in the cafes, we're the ones in arts and entertainment, so we're the ones who are really doing it tough. If you are working in the small companies, because as much as 10 times, now I can't remember if this is a stat for Victoria or Australia overall, but if you're in a large company, you've got about 10% chance of being stood down versus if you're working in a small one, which is quite significant. And then that's only exacerbated where the younger crowd works. Realistically, Australia is a land of an opportunity, so there is a lot of landlords built up portfolio now, but they've got their apartments sitting empty. The renters, they're hurting. Businesses are hurting. So a lot of people are hurting. Now, for council does have a decent amount of rates. It's got about $309 million. Now, there's a lot of talk about, let's cut rates, let's do this, let's do this. I don't think cutting rates is enough. Why? Why is cutting rates not enough? Because if you cut rates, what will happen is, particularly in an economic crisis, the people who are better off, quite smartly, will say, well, hey, I've got all of my necessities covered. You know what? I'm going to take that extra $1,000. I'm going to chuck it into my bank account for a rainy day. It's a smart thing to do. We've seen it happen. As an example, if you look at the stats in America, what happened with the stimulus check, and you can look by the income where it went. And nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with being smart and getting this. But we do need to get the economy moving. So what my plan about reviving Melbourne is cutting the rates, be it by 10 or maybe even 20%. But there are certain conditions to that. So when I say to cut the rate, for the landlords, they will receive a certain amount of vouchers to be spent on local business, predominantly on the hospitality and entertaining, because those businesses, they need an infusion. They will also, half of their, let's say, savings, they need to be passed off onto the renters, and they need to prove that they've lowered the rent, because the renters are doing it tough. That can be passed either by money, or if the renters are saying, no, okay, I'm comfortable with paying my $400, I'm comfortable with paying $350, whatever the case may be, the landlord does split the vouchers with them. Again, they can only be spent in the city of Melbourne, only on the businesses of Melbourne. Now, I do understand in certain way it sounds as extremely socialistic, but it's not, because every business will not get the same amount of money. They will have to compete. Some businesses will do it better. Some will do it worse. It's it is free market economy. The ones that are able to do it, they will survive. The ones that are not,
Well, I think coronavirus, if it taught us anything, is that it's nowhere near as free a market as some of us. I had, for me, it was a massive shock just at how quickly the governments at all levels just came in and went, shut your business, go home. I was
Exactly.
one of them. My little enterprise. I kind of went, yeah, right. What happened there? That hurt. You know what I mean? Like, hang on, it's a free economy. I should be allowed to go out and make my money and pay my bills however I see fit, as far as I'm concerned, within certain parameters.
Yes.
But the coronavirus, and I interviewed Jeffrey Tucker for the program, or one of the other programs we do, and I don't know if you know Jeffrey, but he's an amazing economist. If you want to get into some of his stuff, and, you know, it was really shocking to me just how non-free our economy is. So what you put forward there is a fantastic way of trying to work within the system that's already sort of broken out of the box, because what already works isn't going to continue to work. I don't think. I think we really need to think differently to how we've ever thought before. And I think the people who adapt and grow and modify are going to be the ones who will make a success of the next 10 years in Australia, with the amount of debt and the government interference and everything else. There are people who can work in and around that problem. And when I say problem, I mean government, generally speaking. Mate, okay, a couple of I've read your bio. I've looked into who you are. One of your topics of interest is the vaping topic. Now, I made a video during my last election campaign. I'm a bit of a serial troublemaker for politicians around the country. And I took some shots at Greg Humphrey's vaping stance and vaping policy. So I'm not a vapor, I'm not a smoker, I'm not really in that space, but I do respect people's rights to do it. Mate, what are your thoughts on vaping? You've sort of mentioned it as one of your key areas, one of your areas of concern. Tell me about it.
Absolutely, and like I say, in terms of my understanding of vaping, like I'll provide full disclosure, because anyways, it's in my bio. It's very easy to see on LinkedIn and the other things. I've spent 12 years working for big tobacco years ago, so that's how I started. So this is why I understand vaping versus with cigarettes. I was in tobacco. Not only that, I have spent close to 15 years of smoking, sometimes doing as much as 2 packs a day. Now, it's dangerous. It's not good. It's not healthy. I mean, it's try running after a pack of smokers. It's not. It's just not going to happen. And I really wanted to, to get off this in my 30s. So I started getting off smoking and into vaping in the UK, and I successfully gotten off that for about 9 months. I got to Australia. There just wasn't vaping options. I got back onto smoking. Now, I smoked for about half a year. I did manage to find a nurse as a smoking cessation therapist, and she pointed me out to a website which helped me with prescriptions. So I actually now I'm one of the very few people in the country who has a vaping prescription. I'm legally allowed to have certain participating pharmacies compound my nicotine for me. And I more or less have been off cigarettes. I can't say I'm completely off cigarettes, because when I do run out of my vaping stuff and I can't get it the supplies in time, I do go back back onto cigarettes. As happened a couple of weeks ago, I just didn't get it. But the fact of the matter is, having vaping and having that allowed, it saves lives. Simple as that. We've got preventable deaths from smoking. So, if we're talking about saving lives, from corona and all of this, that's all great. But we can save thousands, tens of thousands, if we allow vaping. It's proven. We've got the Australian, let's say, different Australian colleges of medical professionals, different New Zealand ones. We've got the global one. There is a plethora of research to say vaping is better than smoking. So why is the government not allowing this? Or at the council level, they tried to ban it in the city of Melbourne. Can you believe it? Especially in Bourke Street Mall, because there was clouds of smoke. I mean, the fact of the matter is, after the smoking rates went down to about 10%, they have plateaued. Putting the prices up is not healthy. Plain packs, sure, because that's exactly what the smokers used to buy. Pretty pictures on the packs.
Yes, that used to be. key motivation for people was always that. I mean, I suppose one of the arguments used to be ads like the Marlboro Man being really cool, and ads like, you know, some of the girls they'd get on there. But I think anybody with any, and I'm not a smoker, so but I've always looked at it. The only role for government would be to go, here's the education around this product. If you choose to then use that product, you might be a dummy, but it's your choice on that topic, whether that be that, whether it be marijuana, whether it be riding without a bicycle helmet. You may be a dummy if you choose not to wear a bicycle helmet, but it's your head. We've given you the facts that we have, and that would be a legitimate role in my eyes for government. Is we're not here to tell you what you can and can't do. We're here to provide you with as much information for you to work with as possible, and then go from there. That's about the only key area for that I would see. I'd love to see vaping legalized. I think it's a big protection racket. I think they were projected for 2020 up until Corona, so it may or may not count now. But I think they were projected to make about $20 billion in cigarette revenue in 2020 at one stage here last year when I did some research. So I mean, that's a cash cow if ever there was a cash cow. Vaping may or may not. It's not good. Why not for the government if they run out of cash?
Well, and that's a great point. And I mean, it's also a classical example, you know, of governments, and one of the things I've noticed is even the left-wing governments, right? And we've got a right-wing government in power now, but even the left-wing government, they talk about protecting the vulnerable, protecting the poor, but they don't actually do that. What they actually do is they go after their money. They go after them. And another great example bringing to the state. So that's, you know, smoking at the federal level. I mean, did Labor do anything to actually protect the vulnerable? No, they haven't. Did they do anything here at the state level? It's exactly the same principle. The left wing, they talk about protecting the vulnerable, but that's nothing more than words. The Labor and left wing, including Greens and the other ones of the current of 2020, they're not the ones of the 1920. All that's left is words and special interest.
Mate, 100%. And the only caveat I would probably throw at you to digest is I don't actually believe there's a left wing and a right wing in Australian politics anymore. We just have two forms of socialism, one coloured red, one coloured blue. The Labor Party has gone so far left, well, in the traditional paradigm of left, and the Liberal Party, they've just followed. They're only slightly behind in the progressive states. They're not conserving anything anymore, which I suppose in their doctrine they're supposed to be somewhat conservative. They're not really conserving anything from what I can tell, other than their grip on power, which worries me, disgusts me, and I sort of sit there and think the Liberal Democrats we are what the Liberal Party should have been, I suspect, in its original thought process. And I've had people sort of say to me all the time, it's like, why are you in politics? I'm like, I don't want to be in politics. I'm here because they're doing such a bad job. That's my only motivation, is you guys are so bad at it that you've got to deal with me and guys like yourself who may or may not really be politically motivated to get involved and say you guys are really doing a bad job. And that's both sides of politics. I don't think there's any doubt how bad a job they're both doing.
Oh, 100% agree with you, and I completely agree with you. There is no left and right anymore, and I think we're going to talk about Australia. I think that's true for other countries as well, but certainly here, it does make sense to me how I classify things. I classify them, I suppose, slightly different. I classify them as people who want freedom, who want to be free, and people who want to oppress each other. That's a new paradigm. And in terms of supporters, I do feel, and this is something I'm passionate about. I do feel that us as a Liberal Democrat, we're actually able to appeal to voters both on what used to be right and both what used to be considered left, because we're the people who want freedom, and a lot of people who are currently voting on the left, they've come from countries where situations are difficult, so they actually understand. Now, Liberals, they spent years demonizing them. Labor, at least in Victoria, they just stabbed them in the back. I mean,
Yeah.
we've got nobody to go to. We're a credible alternative, and I'm honestly believe that most of them, the reason they came here is to work hard, you know, to do the best, and that's why we're here. So
The
that's
life.
the type of people which.
Yeah, yeah, and all government's job. I don't care if you're Liberal Party, Labor Party, whatever you are. All your job is to provide the things that people are not capable of providing for themselves. Not the things that they think they want, the things that they are not capable of providing for themselves is the only viable thing for a government to be doing. I don't want you to collect my rubbish necessarily at a council level. I'd rather, if it's a service I want, I'll ring up and say, hey, how you going? Who does rubbish collection? Right, I'd like my rubbish collected once a week. Having a mandated, well, you need to pay for that within your rates, to me seems like it's like extortion, really. Well, no, I'd rather drive out to the tip myself and handle my own rubbish at a cheaper rate or whatever the case may be. Mate, how would you look at sustainability in the Melbourne electorate? Is that the right term for your electorate, the Melbourne electorate, or is it Melbourne district?
Melbourne City Council, I think that's how we refer to it. Melbourne City Council. Yeah, it is an interesting one. So sustainability is we are a very progressive council. So sustainability is something that's very, very important to our voters. And on this one, my view is, I think often it's a situation, you know, it's a polarizing issue. Sometimes some people say, okay, yes, we've got to do sustainability, you know, otherwise the earth is going to blow up, and that's what's going to happen. And then on the other side, it's like, oh yeah, nothing is going to happen. And then if we burn a coal plant, that produces zero pollution. Now, it's to me, there is a very simple situation: is we need economic development, and right now, especially right now, why don't we have an option of doing it in a clean way? Why would we choose the dirty way? If it's a cost-efficient thing to do it in a clean way, then let's always go to that option. In fact, you know, even if it's, you know, an extra 1, 2, maybe 5%, that's not an issue. But if we think that 10 years down the track we'll have to pay billions to fix up the mess that we're doing now, then it makes sense to pay a little bit more of an extra. If we're paying triple, no, that's bad business. We don't do that. So what that means specifically is I do see bicycles as one of the ways that the city can get revived. There will be a lot of people uncomfortable to be using public transport. There was a service provided with the bikes around the city, which has been scrapped. So that's something. So when we talk about rates reallocation, and we will have to reallocate rates, and because they're there already. I don't necessarily. I mentioned the reason that in the current circumstances, I don't believe the rates need to be given back and end up in the bank accounts. Yes, it would be nice, but there is a community aspect. We actually do need to live. We're in a mess. We're in a crisis mode. So, as you said, we've got to be a bit outside of a box. So, part of that money could be allocated to bikes and to encourage getting people back to the city, getting them to use around the city, and getting them to move around. And the other thing that people talk about, circular economy and all the other things. What I always say to people who write me emails such as that is, I always welcome sensible suggestions if it helps to get the city back to growth, and if it helps to do it in an economic way and a sustainable way. Well, that's an ideal idea.
Yeah, yeah. Which I think, and that's important. You've got to every society, and people they still seem confused to me, but we do have to have economic factors considered. We do have to have sustainability and environmental factors considered. We do have to have human nature considered, and the one area that always not trumps all of those, but is key to all of those working well is actually freedom and liberty. If we have the freedom and liberty, I believe 9 times out of 10 people make good decisions. If you gave everybody all the facts and said, we've got a great big coal station here, this is what we understand that it does, but over here we've got a great big nuclear power plant, or one of the little prism systems, I don't know if you're familiar with those, or you've got a wind farm. Now, this will give you these benefits, these negatives. So, these are the pros, these are the cons. This will give you the pros, the cons, this will give you the pros, the cons. with the correct, accurate information, I believe 9 times out of 10, most people will choose the one that ticks as many of those boxes as possible for that price point. It's environmentally, it's efficient. We're going to have enough power, or whatever the case may be. Just as an example.
Absolutely, and I think when I look at Australia, the thing that perplexes me from the logical perspective, having a nuclear. This is a country made for nuclear power, because this is a country that's got a massive desert in the middle. And when we look at the previous accidents that have happened, look, Long Island, it's a bit of an issue, but Chernobyl, we cannot compare it to Chernobyl. Again, I come from that country. I will tell you a Chernobyl that's happening right now. It's what Dan Andrews and his government has done. Now that's a Chernobyl. It's a different one. So it's less to do with, it's not a technology, it's a man-made disaster. Same over there. So Chernobyl is irrelevant. Fukushima, yes, putting a nuclear power plant on a fault line might not be the most optimal placement, I would say. Middle of Australia.
Well, Fukushima isn't as a great example. I mean, let's be realistic about the number of deaths from Fukushima. When you actually go through the facts as opposed to the panic, the actual nuclear reactor didn't cause the deaths. It was the tsunami and the earthquake. So it just so happened that they had a massive earthquake, and then they had a massive tsunami, and then the nuclear power reactor kind of tanked. And you sort of think, well, hang on a minute, we've got a great country that's so geologically stable, it's not funny. We're probably, our population should almost be paying zero electricity bills when you look at the amount of resources that we have. Why are we paying so much for electricity? It baffles me. I don't get it at all when we've got such great opportunities. And if you're not familiar with the prism technology yet, I did some research for my candidate. I think it's GE, General Electric, I think, is building these. And they actually use recycled nuclear waste. They actually recycle the waste, which solves the problem, which is the big one that people talk about. So if you get 5 minutes to Google it, PRISM, I think it's called. I might even send you a link later. I've saved it. It's technology.
Perfect. That'd be interesting. Like I'm genuinely interested in that, and I think if we talk about environmental footprint, it's again a lot less than wind or solar, and I think it's a classical example. If you look at the certain parties like the Greens, they love to posture, they like what do you call it, to be virtuous and all of this. Whereas we know that both wind and solar, we've got a much larger footprint than nuclear. I'll give you an example in my elections, in my council election, of the same thing. So we've got the Greens, posters everywhere, flying material everywhere. Now, as far as election goes, I am way greener than the Greens, because the only papers that I have printed are the ones to register me for the party. I'm not doing the handout how to vote cards. It's purely a digital campaign. It's purely word of mouth. So if we want to talk about sustainability, I don't talk about sustainability. I do sustainability.
Yeah. Some people talk about it, mate. Some people be about it. Now, how are you going for volunteers? How's your support base? Because obviously I've run campaigns, and my last campaign I had the most support. I was so proud of the Lib Dems after that. Mate, how are they getting behind you? Have you got the manpower you need to, boots on the ground, so to speak? Are you getting the support you need, the volunteers?
They're definitely getting support. There's been a lot of inquiries, and the nice thing is there is inquiries from different sides, so from different groups. So I've got a few people, and the main one is because I made a decision not to do how to vote cards, and the reason for that, I question their effectiveness. Everybody gives a stack of how to vote cards, and I think I mentioned to you earlier in the program that I spent years in marketing. Particularly, I've been in some very senior head of trade marketing roles, director of trade marketing, both types of roles. So I actually I look at all of those things as merchandise, and whenever it's a political campaign or a campaign with a brand or product, you sometimes use the same promotional material. And how to vote cards, I've got a question. I mean, honestly, if you are a voter and you get a stack of cards like that, which one are you going to go for? You either made up your mind, or most things are not going to make you choose. So, main thing.
yeah, most people have sort of already made up their mind before they get to the polling booth. I've found they're intangible. There is some advantage, but I don't think it's probably worth the amount of effort, time, money invested. So I think it's great we haven't bothered with how to vote cards. The other side is, we're not really about telling people what to do. We just want to put forward solutions and hope people take the best choice, which for the City of Melbourne or the Council of Melbourne, Paul Silverberg seems like he's switched on, he's smart, he's articulate, he understands the issues. He should be top of everybody's vote card in your electorate. They're mad if they don't vote for you, particularly in a current climate where communism is reigning supreme. Having a man who's actually experienced the big time communism and is now seeing comparisons, I think it's invaluable to have you elected to the council. I think it's great. I think the more Liberal Democrats we can get selling the dream of freedom, around the country, I think it's absolutely necessary. I don't think it's something that, whereas the previous years it's been, oh look, it's important, it's cool. Now it's a must. And mate, I really, really hope you can get the support you need. I really hope that the City of Melbourne gets behind you. I'll sort of be doing everything I can to promote and share you and get you out there, mate. Is there anything you want to put out for the voters or the people who are going to watch this program? And is there anything you want to put out and tell them?
Yes. As a closing remark, so to speak, thank you for listening, and I do invite you to follow my page. I do invite you to reach out and message me. I always like hearing the ideas, and exactly as Dean said, the fact is your freedom is at stake now. The scariest thing about authoritarian regimes is not even the actual regime, is when it falls, the chaos that happens. And I've been through that chaos. You don't want to see that. Let's avoid it here. Let's do what we can. And there's a lot of people who agree with us. We just need to get our name and our ideas out there. There's a lot of people. I honestly believe, if people knew about us, if people knew what we stood for, then our support would be standing 10, 20, 30, who knows? But it would be a huge support. What this one has done, it's an opportunity to help with people. We just need to get our message out there, and let's focus on that. So talk to your friends, explain them who we are, join, follow, and let's get a dialogue moving. Let's get Melbourne moving, and if you're outside of Melbourne, well, let's get other parts of countries moving as well.
Paul Silverberg, mate, thank you very much for joining us. Well done on your campaign so far. Let's keep selling freedom, mate. Have a great day and tune on in.
Thank you.